Hello, everybody. Today we have a guest that I'm really excited to present. As a young coach, when I first got into the game, I was kind of looking for any bit to help me out. I was reading articles, going to classes, clinics, this, that, the other thing, getting my licenses. Just hungry for any new information to help me out as a 24-year-old taking over a varsity program. And one of the things I really stumbled upon that really was like so much important to my development was a little podcast called Coaching Soccer Weekly, and it was run by none other than Tom Mura, who's on tonight with us. He spent over a decade as one of the most influential voices in the global coaching community. He had nearly 400 episodes. He served as the host and creator of the Coaching Soccer Weekly podcast. Um, he talked about tactical deep dives to nuances of player development. He's interviewed the brightest minds in the sport and distilled complex coaching philosophies into practical lessons for the grassroots and youth levels. Beyond the microphone, he is a seasoned veteran of the pitch, bringing years of experience as a director of coaching and technical director. He's a true student of the beautiful game who has dedicated his career to helping coaches find their why and players find their potential. It's an honor to have a pioneer of soccer media and a master of the craft with us today. Please welcome, I know you're going to be excited about it, but I'm very excited about it, former host of the Coaching Soccer Weekly podcast, Tom Mura. All right, we got Tom Mura. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you guys.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I mean, we were talking about before we got on here, me and Fed, and just talking about hearing your voice and getting this conversation with you. It's like nostalgia. I was saying how I remember, I vividly remember being 24, taking over, got my first varsity head coaching job, scared out of my mind, not really, what am I gonna do? I'm barely older than these kids, and I'm just like listen to the podcast, mowing lawn. I'm like listening to episode after episode, and just talking to you right now really takes me back. So very excited to have you on.
Well, I appreciate it. You guys must have been the two people listening. I knew there was somebody.
No, come on.
I mean, I was a 22-year-old or 23-year-old who never played soccer, who this guy, Matt, trusted to take over a middle school program. And I'm like, I need stuff fast. And yeah, found Coaching Soccer Weekly. So it's awesome.
That's awesome.
It's, I feel like, welcoming you onto the podcast is like, shouldn't it be the other way around?
Seriously, yeah. So to get started, can you just let's delve into the lore a little bit. Just tell us a little bit about your background, your playing coaching experience, and then how that got you into to running a very successful podcast.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Kansas City. Went to Rockhurst High School, which is a notoriously good soccer school. Didn't play there because there was no way. All boys school, Rockhurst, 150 kids at tryouts. So that, I played youth soccer, didn't play in high school. Then the boom of indoor soccer happened in the early 80s, and then anybody could play. So then kind of started playing at All-American Indoor Sports back in the day. It's still there, by the way. And kind of got into playing there. Played enough to where I felt like, okay, I could keep doing this. And as I graduated from high school, the University of Missouri, Kansas City was going from, I think they were like a D3 school or maybe not even NCAA, but their basketball program was really good. So they were going D1. So they were starting a soccer program because you have to start all these programs in order to qualify for D1. So I ended up playing Division I soccer at UMKC for 2 years, even though there's no way I could have made my high school team. But it was a great opportunity to keep playing. I loved the game, all that time. Indoor, I got to play a lot, so that was great. Indoor, you can play 3 or 4 days a week if you want to. So
that's funny, just how much you talked about indoor in your episodes and how passionate you were about it, and that's where it comes from. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And as that kind of time at the indoor place went on, I got interested in the idea of how to work with that facility, to work there. And so I started working at the front desk. I started refereeing. I started coaching. Pretty soon, I was doing everything. There were days where I would work 48 hours between running the place, coaching. I'd do a lock-in overnight with kids that came in to play soccer, and then I'd work the next day. So I was kind of the gym rat at All-American and just kind of ran that for a long time, and then just kind of fell in love with that whole arena. Andy Barney, who is the director of coaching for the Legend Soccer Club, he started coaching Premier Soccer in Kansas City. He was the first one to do it. Everybody else was volunteer coaches. So he was also the marketing director for All-American Indoor Sports. So I kind of got to know him that way. He could only coach so many teams. I started coaching teams. We then got together and started coaching together. And I coached for Legends for 17 years before I went over to Sporting Blue Valley when Peter Vermees and John Perry and Chris Duke and those guys took over that. And now I've been at Sporting Blue Valley since then. I'm a age group director there for our girls 8 through 12s. I run the recreational program, which is like, I think we're gonna have like 3,800 kids this year, 270 teams. It's massive. So doing that, and along the way, I transitioned from kind of doing the thing with Andy Barney to moving to work with Mike Safe at World Class Coaching. So that was the link, and that's how the podcast got started. Mike called me one day and was like, "Okay, we should do a podcast," and it's something that I was interested in anyway because I listened to podcasts. So I kind of dove deep into all that and got into it and found that I really enjoyed it. It was, like we were talking about before, kind of a cathartic thing for me to be able to get out my coaching ideas that I was tinkering with in practices and come and talk about it on the podcast. So, ended up being a chance for me to talk to other, coaches about things and just kind of relay what I knew and hopefully help some people and then try to learn more from the guests that I had on.
I love that because I feel like, and I've tried to explain this to, I was telling you before, like my wife, not really into soccer, not really, I can't come home and be like, this session I tried, this worked. She's like, oh, that's nice, that's great. But like that ability to talk about what you're doing, it can be, and having Fed it was great, and having assistant coaches is great. But especially the youth, you're a lot of times you're on your own and you're doing back to back sessions, and then you're like doing all this stuff, and maybe you have a beer after with somebody else, but it's hard to have those types of conversations when you're go. And the other thing I picked up, talked about your 48 hours. I'm like, how is he talking about 48 hours in a day? I'm like, oh no, there you go.
I was gonna say, Matt, now those 48 hours don't seem so bad. Like they used, like me going to scout South River for the 5th time in 3 years doesn't seem that bad.
Right. And it's like, and we never played them, by the way, but but yeah, I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong here. I feel like that what we did, me and Fed, and not to the extent that you did, was we just dove right in, and it was just like you have to it doesn't matter how much you played or anything like that, you have to just dive in and get fully immersed to get to the where you need to be as a coach, in that, especially in those early days where you're like, I hope you're not working the 48-hour sessions now. I hope you've slowed down a little bit for your own health, but that's kind of what you got to do in the beginning. It's one of those things where you can't, there's no cheat, right? There's no cheat code to just be like, oh, I'm just going to figure this out and I'm going to say something inspiring at halftime and my team's going to be fantastic.
No, the only thing you can do is go and do it. Just go start coaching. That's when people ask me, young kids that are graduating from college and they're like, I'd like to get into coaching. What do I do? Well, number one is to have no expectation of what level you're going to coach. Just go, whatever kids they put in front of you, coach those kids. And the better job that you do with those kids, the more opportunities that you'll get and move on. But, and kids coming out of college think, I'm going to go coach, ECNL, or I'm going to go coach, MLS next. No, you're not. You're going to coach U8 fourth team boys. It's the worst job in the world. It's the hardest thing to do. And you just have to get in there and cut your teeth on those. And then as you get more experience, they'll give you opportunities to do other things.
If you can coach U8 boys and keep them in line, you can do anything. You could coach anybody. And everything else it's like a weighted bat.
It's the hardest job in the club. It's the hardest. I'd never do it.
Yeah, I had them for a little bit. It was a lot. But yeah, like you said, I did so many different age groups. I was doing when I was working with the club, I was doing training sessions for the 3-year-olds. We're playing body part game where you touch touch your knee to the body part, your knee to the ball, and I feel like I was still learning from that. I was still taking things. Obviously we weren't playing body part game with my high school players, but the dynamics of how to interact.
You could try it.
Yeah, we did. We tried, and they're like, "What the hell are we doing?"
Even
here,
that
coach?
would still be a challenge for our teams. Come on.
So, but getting in that, you learn about yourself as a coach, and reflecting on it is so important, especially early on. But even now, constantly just reassessing what you're doing and questioning yourself and accepting criticism. And again, sometimes it's you have to force yourself to do that and look at yourself and be critical and be like, you can't be like, hey, my session's great, those kids just suck. That's not how it works. And I think you really you can't blame an 8-year-old or you can't blame a 4-year-old for your session not being right. You're the adult in the room. But with that podcast, you get to have those types of really in-depth conversations. That what we're finding now, just starting out. So I think my next question is what are some of the biggest takeaways you had from doing the podcast? Maybe even not even just I guess your guests and what they took you were able to take from them, but even just some of the things like you're talking, you're like, wait, I have an idea from that. Like, what are some of the big takeaways you had from doing the podcast?
Some of the biggest ones were, well, getting a comfort talking in front of people. I mean, funny enough, because dealing with teams and everything, I was young still, even, at that point. So having that exposure, and I knew there was a lot of people listening, so there's pressure. When you're talking to Bob Warming, who's, an iconic coach, you're talking to people that know what they're doing. You want to come across well. So, that's something that I kind of gained from that, and I'm super comfortable talking to those people now. So that was helpful. On the coaching side, just different perspectives, because you kind of get in your mindset of how you do things. When you get to interview somebody and maybe they have a slightly different take on things, then that kind of opens up your mind to thinking about it. The other thing is having to break down my sessions to somebody that can't see me was great, because then I had to be able to describe what it is we were doing. Now, some of the videos I did for World Class Coaching made it easy to kind of show what it was, but to try to break it down, describing it, meant that I really had to, think about it closely and critically. So, those things were great for my coaching as well. That I continue to coach now, so I take some of those things away now.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you saying that, because like I always have struggled to like I can't put like I need the visual. And I never really did that. Like, what listening to you was always like fantastic. And I got it, but I can hear you saying like, and we'll have those in the show notes. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because I kind of got that one, but like I'm gonna need some backup. And it's funny you bring up Bob Warming. I don't think he'd remember me, but I actually, same deal. Like, I was just not the level of player to play at Penn State where I went to college. But he was there. I was a manager for a year there while he was there. And that episode was unbelievable. Again, like hearing some of the things some of those guys were able to articulate in those episodes was really really unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, Tom, my question for you, because you were talking about you spent a lot of time, especially got back into the game with that indoor kind of explosion in the 80s, and it's actually kind of funny you brought that up, because today I just saw a quote that came up about the power of indoor and about how like there is no such thing as like a bad touch in indoor, or you don't get forgiven for poor touches, so on and so forth. What was the role? Like, how would you say your experience coaching indoor and outdoor? Like, what were the similarities and differences, and what are some of the main things you take from coaching the indoor game to when you're coaching the outdoor game?
So early in my coaching, I only did indoor, and then kind of progressed to outdoor. So as the premier team started, then we started playing outdoor leagues, but then we only played indoor in the wintertime, and then spring and fall outdoors. But then as time went on, then I started coaching futsal. So I'm going to bring that in as well. With indoor soccer, I don't agree with that. There's no such thing as bad touch, because I've had plenty. And you can still.
Fed, I've seen
Don't
you
worry,
play.
same here.
I've seen you indoor, Fed.
If your
Why do you
second
think I
touch
played
is
goalie?
if your second touch is a tackle, then you know that wasn't a good first touch. And so I still think there's things to learn from that. I think the benefit of it is the repetitions that you get from indoor, because the ball stays in play so much more. And that's one of the negatives to futsal, or can be one of the negatives to small-sided outdoor with 7v7, 9v9, the ball spending a lot of time out of play. So with the ball being constantly in play in the indoor field, then they do get forgiven some mistakes, but then is that more important than the touches that they get, or the touch is more important than the fact that maybe one wasn't good, but then they get another chance to have another good touch, and they get to continue to play. So I can see kind of both sides of that, and that's where futsal kind of comes into the discussion, because futsal is a game of out of bounds. I mean, that thing is going out of bounds all the time. Talk about U8 boys. U8 boys first game futsal season. That's that you tear your hair out over that. But as time goes on, because the penalty is so high, the touch gets better. Because the repercussions of losing it, they have to get better at that touch. So for me, there are benefits to every one of the different types of games. My daughter loved futsal. That was her favorite sport. Honestly, if she could play futsal and never play outdoor again, she would have done that. And there's kids that hate futsal because they enjoy the speed and the how dynamic outdoor is versus the kind of close quarter speed of indoor or futsal. So I think there's something to be learned from every version of the game. I don't know about beach volleyball or beach soccer, but other other versions, because I know beach
It's
soccer is a
fun.
thing. But yeah, maybe. But I mean,
we're
for
for the,
me,
we're
there's
from
got to
Jersey,
be.
so we're a little more attuned to it. So
Yeah,
There you go.
Wildwood has a massive like beach blast tournament that our kids would go down and play in sometimes from New Egypt, and we would go and watch, and we'd just be like, "All right, this is cool. Okay,"
yeah,
like that was it.
To me, there's a
yeah,
ball and they're using their feet. That's the only two similarities to soccer.
yeah.
I mean, otherwise there's no pass. I mean, whatever. But I mean, just to answer your question though, I just think you get so much from all of them. I don't think anybody should discount one over the other. I think it's part of a well-rounded kid to be able to play all of those.
Yeah, just like the changes and being able to adjust to things. We used to do like we haven't done it recently, but we used to throw like we'd throw like a size 5 out there in the middle of the game, and then like ball go to bounds, we'd throw in a size 4 or a futsal ball on the grass, and just like adjust and just creating that adjustment. I like how you brought up the out of bounds thing because I think that's something um, we talk about like you want them playing all the time, but you want them to learn the structure, like right, like I did some with my younger players, and we were like, there's no out of bounds. I'm just throwing the ball in. We're restarting, and I'm like, this is great. They're getting so many touches in the first game. Like no one, we had like 3 foul throws. I'm like, oh crap, we didn't cover that. Like so, but yeah, getting them just feeling uncomfortable. I feel with what they're doing. If you love futsal, go play indoor. If you can't stand, you can't stand playing outside, go play outside because you'll learn the different parts of it.
Yep. Yep.
So you coach. What squads are you getting with right now? Like, what's the age group you've got this season?
So predominantly I coach what's called our juniors academy, which is kindergarten through second grade. I do that on the girls' side because they listen. And so that makes life easier. And then I have a U16 girls team, actually, a 2010 girls
Okay.
team that the guy that had it before is our director of coaching. And he wanted to, make sure he got passed on and he couldn't find somebody to do it. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. And they're great kids. I mean, they're fantastic, but they're also high school girls.
Mm.
So, kind of the amount of turn up at practice isn't always the greatest.
Yeah.
But when they're there, they're all in and they work hard, and they're kind of our third team in the club. So they're good soccer players. They're just not at that highest level. But fine for me. If they're putting in the effort and the energy, that's all I care about. I'd like them to have a little bit more attendance. But
Now yeah, I had a U14 girls team, and it was like one girl's like they were also doing like golf and lacrosse, and I was like, some days like there was days I show up and there was literally no one there, and they're like, sorry, we're not gonna practice. I'm like, all right, but the one thing that like now you tell me here because you've coached more girls teams than me, but like I've always found because I do coach softball now, and I've coached for a while, but like the one thing I found is with boys, you almost have to tell them like you're not as good as you think. Like you can be that way, but you kind of got to pull them back. With girls, you have to almost be like, no, you're better than you think. You are actually like really good at this. And like I don't know, they're a little like more timid in that part. I think I found that's like the biggest difference between the coaching the two different groups.
Was
But
it
what
girls
would you
you
say are the
lead,
biggest
boys you
differences?
drive?
Yep, yep, yeah.
that's the Anson Dorrance quote, isn't it?
Hmm.
You drive
Yeah, I
men, you
think
lead
so.
women. Yeah. And he also had another thing. I believe it was him. I hope I'm attributing it to the right person. But he talked about not showing negative aspects of the game to his women's team because they already knew that they got it wrong. But you have to show the negative stuff to your men's team because they think everyone else got it wrong. So that's, to me, that was kind of a key difference between the two. I enjoy coaching the girls because it's more relationship coaching. You're coaching the person, and I'm sure for a lot of guys coaches it's that way too. For me, it's more so with the girls. I mean, there are girls that I coached at 10 years old and didn't coach again, and they still said hi to me every time I saw them. And there's guys that I coached at 8, 9, 10 years old, and I'd see them and they're on their phone or whatever, and they act like I don't exist. So for me, I enjoy that part of it too. The actual training and games, I love training women and girls in the game or the practice environment because they will listen, they will process, you can describe, and they will do easy. When you get to games, pulling that competitive fire out of them is sometimes been a challenge for me. Now, that's a broad generalization. There have been some girls that were just rock stars and worked so hard and were so competitive just naturally. But for a lot of them, it didn't come as easily. So pulling out that competitive nature, which is, I think, why Anson did so much of the competitive stuff, the 1v1, 2v2 kind of competitive cauldron that he called it. And I copied so much of that. And Andy Barney from the Legends copied so much of that in order to try to pull that competitive fire out of the kids. So for me, those are the big differences. I enjoyed coaching both. I coached all boys until my daughter started playing. And then my daughter started playing, and then I slowly transitioned into all girls. And I wouldn't go back.
Yeah, and if you got the quote wrong, we'll have Anson on, and he can defend his claim. So
yeah, I'm sure.
We'll hit him up and let him know. But so you got that difference, but then you've also got the U8 U16. Like that's a huge jump, a huge jump because like you said, the U8s and you're like it's just herding cats, and the U16s you're herding cats, but they have phones. But like so
exactly, that's exactly it.
But what are some of the things you do differently? I mean, we know the generalizations of the technical versus tactical, but like how much are you spending on some of those younger guys? You want them to play, but like I said with the throw-in thing, you want them to understand the game. You want them, I was early on, I was like, all right, we're gonna do the number system, or we're gonna learn that, and they're like you're a 9, you're a 6, they're like, what are you saying? I'm like, maybe we reel it back a little bit, but like, how much are you changing your sessions? Obviously, like the intensity, the size, and stuff like that. But how much different is your session looking between U8, U16, U10, and those kind of differences?
Sure. And it's always a gear shift for me because 2 nights of the week I would finish with a second grade team, and then I'd go to my U16s, and they would do their warm up, and I'd say, just give me 10 minutes. Just give me 10 minutes to reset my brain to you guys, and then I'll be ready to go. But the difference. They're pretty huge, obviously. With our juniors academy program, we run the girls' side, and now even the boys' side does, as a play, practice, play format. So every time kids show up, they start playing 1v1, 2v2, max 3v3. Then we get into the topic and we work on it, and then we finish with the game at the end. The structure is always the same. Kids want to play, so we're trying to develop a love for the game and give them as many touches as we can in realistic game environments where they can learn the technical aspects along, at the same time, kind of a holistic environment, technical, tactical, all together, and learning the rules of the game. So even, when we're playing at the beginning, we'll do, things like you can pass it in or dribble it in at the beginning. But after, we do the practice part and we come to the game at the end, now they've got to do throw-ins. So like you said, they've got to learn all the rules of the game, corner kicks, throw-ins, goal kicks, and so on. Now with the older team, obviously, they've been through a lot of that already. I'll actually sprinkle in some play, practice, play with them, but it's much more kind of the traditional, you start with a warm-up, do a technical, do a game-related, do a small-sided game, finish as large a side as you can, depending on the numbers that you have. But I've used all different kinds of methodologies with them, the warm-up, and then kind of going into some kind of organizational game, implementation game, into the kind of the learning, kind of fitting all that stuff together is one way we've done it too. We've done just a small-sided game format where we just do small-sided games for the whole training session. I think all of those different, obviously things like, doing sessions where you're just doing, positional play. Those have a rule. Attack versus defense. I'm a huge fan with my older team of playing, 7 versus 4, or whatever the numbers are, leaning toward one team or the other to focus on a attacking concept or defending concept. For me, that's where the older kids kind of learn the most because they're getting technical in there, but they're getting game-related stuff that we're going to see on the weekend. So we're going to work on building out of the back, or we're going to working on, scoring goals. If we're playing, 6 versus 4 in the width of the penalty area, we're just going to work on scoring goals, or 5 versus 4, depending on how good your team is. So for me, you can use the same methodologies with different age groups, but some are better than others for different age groups. Where play, practice, play for me is the gold standard for young kids. If you're talking U8 and below, if you're not doing play, practice, play, or some kind of game-related, structure, then they're not having fun. If you're not doing attack versus defense with older kids, then they're not learning the game that they need to learn for game day. So that's how I separate them.
Yeah, and to kind of follow up on that, there's kind of like two parts. Can you define for maybe some people that haven't been into the United States Soccer Federations, like licensing systems like the play practice play methodology and what that looks like from your end, but just in general. But then also to kind of follow up after that, one of the things, I think we're on the same boat with that. Like, I think for the younger guys, it's amazing. It's something I sprinkle in a little bit towards the older guys. But, the one thing I've found, and I think this is a common question, and I don't know if everyone's been able to really answer it, like, how are you integrating technical work, the repetition technical work into sessions that are play practice play? Yeah, you're shaking your head, like that's kind of like the golden ticket if you can figure that one out. But so yeah, can you just describe what play practice play is to everybody, and then talk a little bit about the technical aspects for integrating that into play practice play?
So the whole idea behind play practice play is that kids play soccer for two reasons: for fun and development. So if you start your whole coaching structure with they want to have fun and they want to develop. So what's the first thing that every kid says when they come to practice? The first question they ask the coach is, are we going to scrimmage today? So play practice play just takes that completely out, because the first thing the kids do when they get to the field is they play small-sided games. So just to kind of paint a picture, imagine I'm on a quarter of the field. I've got that divided into half. So I've got small goals at each end of two fields that are side by side. So those are set up for when the kids get there, then one kid gets a yellow penny, or the other kid stays in his red jersey. We'll play ketchup versus mustard, or strawberry versus banana, or whatever it is for that day. Divide the teams up. As new kids come, the game just gets bigger. It goes from 1v1 to 2v2 to 3v3 at the most. Then as practice time arrives, so let's say it's a 4:30 practice, what I found happens with this format is that kids start to get to practice earlier and earlier, because they don't want to miss out on the first part of the game. So like, Mom, Dad, we got to get to practice. We're going to play. We're going to scrimmage at the beginning. So they get there, and then when 4:30 hits, you bring them in, kind of do your greeting for the day. How's everybody doing? Talk about whatever it is that's close to Christmas, close to Halloween, or whatever, and just kind of that orientation moment, that hello moment, super important to me. And then we'll say, today I want you to think about what's the most important thing you need to do if you're defending. Now, go play. And no answer. I don't give them an answer. They don't give me an answer. They go play for 4 to 5 minutes, sometimes less, depending. And then I bring them back in. I say, okay, what are your ideas? What's the most important thing you have to do when you're defending? And we go through that process until we kind of tease out is you got to protect your goal. Right. So now think about things that would help you protect the goal. Go play. And so then they do that, and we talk about those things. And so then the last period of that, usually it's about 15 minutes, that whole play period at the beginning, then it's me reinforcing what they're doing to protect the goal. So this is just one example of a topic. You can use, dribbling to beat a player. You can use how do you help your teammate when they have the ball. You can use any of a number of different things that you want to work on, really anything. And so that's the play portion. Now, if we're going to work on defending, the practice portion is going to be some kind of game-related activity. So it has to have a direction, it has to have a goal, it has to have defenders, it has to have the ball, obviously, and it has to have the normal soccer rules, at least adapted normal soccer rules. And so you do that activity in the middle part of the practice to then get the ideas of defending. Okay, now you get the ideas of body shape. You get the ideas of teamwork on defense, because you're not just defending by yourself. So how many people go to the ball when you're defending? One, okay? Who goes to the ball? The closest person. Hopefully these are the answers that you get with the guided questions. And that's a big part of play practice play, is asking guided questions. Not telling the kids, hey, the closest person goes to the ball, because they heard that or they didn't, but they didn't process it. If you give them a chance to answer it and to come up with the answer on their own, it's more likely to stick, or if one of their peers comes up with it. So then you're coaching that in the middle part, then you play a game at the end, and now you're using key words like protect the goal, like pressure, like cover, how can you help her? Things like that will reinforce what you did in the middle portion. So in some ways, it's kind of like whole part whole in some ways. My instructors would probably yell at me if I said that from the grassroots days. But I mean, in some ways it is whole part whole, because you're starting off with a smaller part of the whole. You're doing a portion of the game, and then you're coming back at the end and having the whole thing. Now,
and you called it a drill, so
I did call it a drill.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Not an activity. Yeah, sorry. Yep, you're right. So then you're right. The first question becomes, well, where does the technical work come into that? And then you come into the whole discussion around quality versus quantity. So you can put somebody in or you can put a kid in a technical activity and teach them to dribble around cones. I'll just use that as an example. Or up and down an alleyway. So if you've got 15 or 12 kids in a practice and you've got teams of 2 and they're dribbling up and down in an alleyway next to each other and they're working on inside of the foot and outside of the foot. So they're working on touches. But how does that relate to the game? There's no defender. There's barely a boundary. There's no goal to it. Your objective is to get there and back again and obviously control the ball. But how does that then transfer? So the key then becomes not just the quantity of touches, but the transfer of training. And the argument is, and I believe about 80% of it, is that the quality touches you get in play, practice, play in game-related environments transfer better than if you were to spend that same amount of time just doing rote, technical, dribble through cones, back again kind of activities. They're more fun for kids, so if we go back to fun and development, dribbling through cones does not tick any box for a kid. They didn't go to practice and hope that they were going to dribble through cones. They wanted to keep the ball away from someone else and try to score a goal. So the more you can put them in that environment, the better off they're going to be. They're going to have more fun. And then hopefully that transfer of training kicks in. So for me, I would do with my teams at like 11 and 12, I would do a play, practice, play day, and I would do a technical or tactical practice day. So I would do a mix. With the young kids that we only have once a week, we only get to have them once. So we've got to develop that love of the game. So we just focus on the play, practice, play.
Now, Tom, I love all of that. And really, too, I think it's really a testament that, for Matt and I being high school coaches, is they say if you really, really want to own your skills as a coach, go coach like every age level, right? So you're talking about the dreaded U8 fourth team, but
Yep.
really it gives you a chance to refine your skills. I really, really like, again, something Matt and I have talked about with a lot of coaches, the whole idea of periodization, right? The kids come in, okay, they know Tuesday we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing this, they know what to expect and everything. My question for you, right? So you're talking about, this whole play, practice, play, small sided games, real live touches, and you still see, even Matt and I see at the high school level, is we're warming up for a game and the other team is in line drills, getting ready for a game. And it's like, why do you think some coaches still struggle? And just like, okay, we got to line up, do the dribbling through the cones. Like, even for that, like, we're getting ready for a game and you see that going on. Like, what's your thought process, and why do you think coaches don't want to move away from that?
I don't know if it's a not wanting to. I think it's, and I don't mean this to sound the way it's going to sound. It's a lack of education or exposure. So they just haven't been exposed to it, and they don't understand it. So when I see people, doing those kind of activities, I think they are coaching the way they were coached, and so really not their fault. And the only thing you could say is, we as clubs and we as coaches of coaches need to do a better job of relating the information so that they understand. I put this information out to our rec coaches that we have every season, and I still go to kindergarten games and see all the kids in line with the ball passing to a coach who lays it off and they shoot. And a kid gets to shoot twice in a warm-up. And that was their warm-up, in air quotes. So I think it's something that people are doing what they've done. They're doing what they were taught to do. And we just need to expand the education more, which is what U.S. Soccer is trying to do with grassroots education. Just trying to get so many more coaches involved in it so that they, see the benefits.
It's like absolutely brutal. Like, I feel like I'm getting ready for games sometimes. Here my kids are doing like, 5v5 plus 3 keep aways, or they're doing some type of, passing pattern that leads to a shot. And then the other team's doing 20 minutes of line drill shooting. And then I lose 4-0. It's like, what the heck is going on?
Like,
yeah.
But I didn't have any lines in my warm up, so
that's
moral
right.
victory. So like I'm going through it all. I did enjoy the play, practice, play methodology. I've definitely, like you said, like younger guys all about it, older guys mixing it and things like that. But I think the one thing I found that, going into it, we had a lot of guys that were just, volunteer coaches that want to get their license and were trying to figure things out. I thought one of the things that was missing from, who am I to say this, but like from the U.S. Soccer Federation explanation was like tangible questioning and building up that wealth of knowledge of questioning. It was a lot of philosophy based stuff, but and I get it. You're only for the lace grassroots, you're only going there for what is it? That one's like a day course, I think, or was when
It
I
is
took it.
a couple
Yeah,
hours.
a couple hours, and you're like, all right, go run this methodology and have these like beautiful thought-based questions that are guiding and then lead to exploration into your understanding of the game. And it's like you're like the dad's like, I played baseball. I don't know. Like I feel like that would have been something really tangible to latch on, it, giving more cement, tangible examples that they can use. But I get it. Like again, it's like a day course, and they're doing a lot of different things. We're trying to develop. So my question for you, like, if you could do that, and you're like, hey, we'll pay for everybody, and it'll be a 3-day course. If money really wasn't an option, what's the biggest thing you would change in coaching education in the United States?
Oof, that's a huge question. I mean,
We
the more
specialize in those.
accessible, what, yeah, obviously the more accessible you can make it, the better. I think there are some instructors out there doing amazing work, and I'm gonna talk about one now. The guy that is coaching director at Massachusetts Youth Soccer Association. If you just Google Mass Youth Soccer, there is so much good play, practice, play stuff on his site. Now he teaches the Grill, which is the grassroots instructor license course that I took, and he's an amazing instructor of coaches, but also a very good coach, obviously. But he has put all of that up on the website, free. Take it, use it. I mean, there's free resources out there, but as far as how to, you got to get the coaches to want the information. That's the challenge. So many, the coaches, and not everybody's like this, but so many think that they've already got the answers. They don't need to ask the questions. And there's so much to learn. That was one of the best things I did as a coach. I mean, shoot, how many years ago was that? That was probably only, it was 2020. I took the U.S. Soccer Director of Coaching license that they were kind of starting. And for me, that was a huge eye opener, just taking that course. Every coach should do continuing education, period. I would never have learned about the grassroots instructor licensing process or that whole methodology if it weren't for doing a course that my director wanted me to do. So I think we need to demand more of our coaches and expect more from them and say, hey, you're working with our most precious resource, which is the young soccer players. And if you're going to do that, you need to go take these courses and do these things. And U.S. Soccer is making it cheap. I mean, the online I think is $25. I think the in-person is probably 125 at max. So they're getting the information out there. I don't know how you make people do it if they don't want to do it, but I think clubs should encourage and subsidize it when they can.
And to kind of follow that up, so they're pushing the play practice play. And when I went there, I was like open-minded, ready to go. I'm like, all right, we'll give it a shot. It might not work in every situation, but I want to hear what you got to say. And I felt like there was a lot of coaches that were kind of like violently against what was going on. Like, no, I'm like, it's not that deep, man. Just like listen to the guy. We got to get the license. Like, it's done in an hour. But I do like that. I like that idea. But it seemed like some stuff. We're going through the. I don't want to. I was going to compliment them now that we're kind of going into it. Some of the stuff was like, hey, this is what they're telling you to do. You don't always have to do it exactly this way. And I guess like my kind of question is for the U.S. Soccer, like how much should they, in your opinion, how much should they be pushing, this is how you should coach, and how much should they be pushing, here's ways to coach, find yours? Because I guess some people, I didn't feel it was that way, but I guess some people in the session were kind of like, you're telling me how to coach, you're telling me what to do, and I don't always want to do it that way. So kind of like what is the role for U.S. Soccer in terms of developing these coaches, telling them how to do it or telling them ways to do it?
Yeah, and I think that giving coaches tools is the number one important thing. So you've got to give them ways to do things. There's not one right way to do anything. They never said in our licensing course for the instructor license, they never said it's bad to do this or you shouldn't do this. They'd say, what do you think about this idea versus that idea? And then you decide what works in each situation. I think one of our instructors said that there were like 27 different ways that he had identified to structure a practice, and that he could identify a reason to use all 27 of those ideas at one point or another. But it didn't mean that you need to find the right tool for the right moment. So I think
we need that one in the show notes, all 27 of them.
I don't have those, but they're out there. Tim will have to do that for you. But I think I don't think they're coming across, and it really depends on your instructor, because when I was doing these courses, I was always like, here's why U.S. Soccer thinks this is important. They did this wide-ranging study of why kids play sports and why kids quit sports, and then they identified those reasons and then came up with a methodology that served those needs to the best of their ability. Now, they've tweaked it over time because it used to be the grassroots play, practice, play extended into the D license. And so they would teach that as the D as well. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
They
that's when I
realized
took
that
my ID license. That's what we had was like
there you
play,
go.
practice, play. I'm like, I don't know. Like, there needs to be some tactical and there needs to be some technical here, and we need to do. We're starting about the physical development of these players. It's no longer like they need conditioning. They don't need that U8, but U16. If we're not conditioning, my kids are gassed, and we need that stuff.
Yeah, and so I think they've worked in kind of the more the WOLI, which is warm up, orientation, implementation, and learning. They kind of put that structure as more a part of the D. I'll be honest with you, I haven't done a D license in a while. I think 2021 was the last D license I was an instructor on. So I can't tell you exactly that they're doing that anymore, but I know that they loosened that up. And so I think they're recognizing that and in my courses, we never had instructors that said you have to do it this way. But I'm sure there are instructors that do. When I did them, it was always, here's a great option. It works really well for these reasons. If you have other ideas, hey, take the best and leave the rest. If you don't like something, then don't use it, but understand it's an option for you. And so I don't think we're too big of a country and too diverse a population of coaches to do, what they would do in the Netherlands and just say, here's our format,
I was gonna say the
4-3-3,
Dutch.
everybody's playing the same way. And to the degree they do or do not do that, I don't know. But that was always the myth, right? Is that they all play the same way.
Yeah, I feel like that's been like such a push. Like we need to. That's what it'll be. If we can develop a style like the Dutch do, and we'll just be like that. And it's like I don't know. Like it's not.
It's like what we talked about with
United States
Sheamus in the second episode is we play 4-2-3-1, overlapping left back, right back, all this other stuff, and yet all of our players play on like counter-attacking teams in Europe.
Right.
And so it's like, hey, here's your style. No, you do this, but you're gonna do this.
Yes.
So speaking of just looking at the game, Tom, right? So you often spoke about let the game be the teacher. So in your experience, like whether it was coaching or D license or doing the courses and everything like that, so kind of this whole conversation like is U.S. Soccer like telling us like, hey, this is the way that you need to coach, this is the way you need to do things. Was there anything that ever came about actual in-game coaching that was taught, and like how do you help young coaches find that balance between, hey, I'm going to sit back, let these kids play, for us in high school, the Jersey 40-minute half, be like, hey, take the first 40, I'll give you 3 things at halftime, versus you're playing FIFA and telling the kids every single action. Like, where do
Please,
you
Sean,
think...
FC now, Sean.
FC, yeah, sorry. But
I'll never call it that.
No, it's never. So where do you kind of find that balance between joystick coaching or to, not really saying that much, and where do you think kind of where we should be in that balance as coaches?
I mean, I think you have to have a big toolkit as a coach, and that's something that we talked about in the courses that I've taken. Is there's a lot of different tools in the toolbox, and you've got to decide which one works for each situation. Coaching in the flow of the game is definitely something that's should be in your toolbox. It's got to be, because you can't freeze during a game. Freeze. Okay, let's talk about what's happening. You can't do that. So you've got to be able to coach within the flow of the game. I also think there are times for joysticking. But I think that if you're joysticking 90% of the time, you're using that tool too much.
Right, because I was going to say a lot of times I see a coach, if I'm on the sidelines and I see another coach joysticking, I'm like, well, what are you doing in practice that you've got to come into a game and you got to say, go here. Now this guy goes here. Now play this ball here. It's like, okay, but what's your practice looking like then?
Yeah. And that, to me, that would be a case of not using the whole toolbox. And you've got to be able to use guided questions and say and keywords and coach within that flow of the game and then sometimes nothing. Sometimes the best thing you can say as a coach is nothing at all. And then come back with a question afterwards of, hey, what's the other choice you could have made there? Get the kid to think about it. So for me, if you're just using one thing too much, and it's like let the game be the coach, right? Or let the game be the teacher. If you're not saying anything, then you're using that tool too much. And so you've got to find a balance, and it's all going to be different. It's going to be different for you guys. It's going to be different for me. It's going to be different for me from one day to the next or one team to the next, which one I'm using more. There's been times I've gone into games and I've said to myself, in this game, I'm not going to say a word when the ball is rolling. I'm only going to talk when the ball is out of bounds or it's stopped for some reason. And so that for that game, that's what I did. There's been other games where I just joystick the heck out of that game because we're playing somebody way better than us. And the only way for me to help the kids see what they needed to do was to coach the heck out of our back four and our holding mids. And so I think there's a time and place for everything. Just if you're relying on one thing all the time, then you're shortcutting. You're not giving the kids what they need because you're doing the same thing all the time.
Yeah, that's great, but tell us what to do.
Exactly.
Tell us the right thing, Tom. We want to know what the right thing is.
That's not in the instructor toolbox either.
Yeah, like
the instructor toolbox would say, "What do you think is the right thing to do?"
no, but yeah, that is like again going back. One of the things we've been trying to we've been just naturally picking out themes. One of the things is like there's no easy way, man. It's like there's no easy way. It's about that. I like the toolbox, and that's what they talk about in U.S. soccer is like having that toolbox of coaching the flow and coaching when it's stoppages or pulling someone aside. But that the true art of coaching is knowing which one to do. You're almost like a caddy, right? And like if you're coaching, joysticking all the time, you can't use your driver on the green. Like you got to be changing things up. Yeah, it's like that's the art of it. It's not there's science to it.
Yes.
There's definitely science to it. The art is being like you pull that kid aside and you say the right thing, and all of a sudden you see them do that consistently. That's it. And one thing we've also pushed, and you kind of brought it up, is like verbiage. We talk about having phrases. We have, in high school we got 16 different club teams coming in, and we're like, all right, now we're going to play for each other. We have commonality in the word we say. Like we say for the edge of the 18 towards the corner, we call that the kill zone. That's where our killer passes are coming from. And it's so funny because like even some of the teams just start like in our division start picking up. They're like, go to the kill zone. I'm like, you don't know what that means.
Oh no, that was the first thing on my scouting report when we played you guys first game this year. I was like, guys, kill zone means balls going wide. Get ready for a cutback.
Yep. So, but like even like having that, you're painting the picture for the player instead of telling them what to do. You're like, hey, remember this, and you're drawing that connection. I always talk about creating like snapshots of in practice. You're creating the snapshots, so when the game happens, it's not going to be like that. But like I've experienced something similar to this. But if you but the game changes, and like you said, like you're like we've never experienced this, and they're beating the bricks off us. I'm going to tell this kid what to do.
Yeah. And then afterwards say, here's why I told you this. And here, do you see how it applied to that? And here's why it worked or here's why it didn't work. And yeah, you're right. That's when it comes down to me, it comes down to the art of coaching more than the science of coaching. If it was a formula, we could all do it at the highest level, and we can't. So it's.
Yeah, I had no lines in my warm up. I had, I was dressed right away. Why did we lose?
Yes, exactly.
So you've, listening to your podcast and the amount of teams you coached, I mean, you must have like a million drills to kind of pull out of the hat. And one thing we've talked about with my program is like we've really toned down the drills because in high school you're just kind of rapid fire. Honestly, when you think about it, it's a 3-month long season, but I think we boiled down we had like 10 actual sessions over the whole 3 months because of how crazy it is. So we look for it to be a little bit more like structured. We modify the drills. So we're not reteaching drills over and over again or teaching new stuff. But you've got like a wealth of knowledge that, I'd love to pick your brain about. We could do a whole session just about the drills that activities that But, you got a 60-minute session here. You got a U8, a U10, and like an older group, like a U16 high school kind of league. What are some of the non-negotiable, things you're putting into these sessions? You're like, what are the things that make it a Tom Mura session for you?
Yeah. It really depends on the topic that we're going after. But like you said, there's a million drills out there. You can be a drill collector and just have all these drills and go out and teach your teams new drills every week. And they have to relearn every single week. So you're better off identifying what are your 5 favorite possession drills? What are your 5 favorite dribbling drills? What are your 5 favorite shooting drills or activities? And then how are you going to use those in different weeks and different periodizations in order to keep coming back to the same thing, because they didn't get it perfect the first time. So why are you teaching them a new activity when they weren't perfect at the last one? So, I mean, for me, it's going to depend on the age groups and the time of year and things like that. But for me, it's always going to include dribbling to beat a player. It's always going to include decision making about when to keep the ball and when to pass, and it's going to include, when you're going to score, how you're going to score a goal, because those are the things. And obviously, if you're going to focus on the defending side, you can talk about all those things on the flip side of the ball. But really, you want to make sure that the kids are dribbling and combining with teammates and shooting in every single session that you do. And so whatever it is that you're going to put together for that day, it almost doesn't matter what the ingredients are, as long as they come from those food groups, if you will. If you hit those, they've got to be able to control and master the ball. They have to be able to realize, hey, there's not just me on the field. Now, again, this depends on the age. If we're talking about the youngest kids where, the ball is playing with me and I'm playing with the ball. What are these other people doing here? That's U6 and things like that. Then that's fine. That's different. But if we're talking, U10, now there's an awareness of teammates. You've got to do things in combination, but you've got to put them in game realistic environments where they get to actually do what they're going to do in the game, so that there's a transfer of training from what they're going to do. So, if you're looking for a session, I would say it's got to start with a fun game. I'm always a big fan of World Cup or Wembley when the kids first get there. Do you guys play that, World Cup or Wembley? Have you guys done those?
World Cup, yeah.
If they're good.
Okay. Wembley's the same thing. Mm-hmm. So playing that at the beginning, then working on a technical aspect, then working on a technical aspect in combination with pressure and teammates, and then putting that into a game-like environment, and then finishing with an actual game. So if you've got a U10 team and you've got, U10s, you probably have 10 kids. You play 5v5 at the end. So, that way you've got that structure where you're always going from, working on something, doing something fun as their arrival activity, working on something technical. If it's dribbling, to me, it's always got to be some part of dribbling in there. For me, dribbling and shooting go together, because I want my players to be able to dribble, beat a player, and take a shot. So if I'm going to include dribbling, I'm going to include shooting somewhere in there, because it's more fun for the kids. Again, going back to fun and development. And they're going to focus more on the dribbling if they get to shoot at the end of it. And then putting it in a game-related environment where it's now going to get tested like it's going to get tested in the games.
Now, when you're doing this session, Tom, what are you give me 3 KPIs or key performance indicators that you're looking at for your kids during this practice?
So if you're looking at, dribbling to beat a player, we'll just stick with that. If you're looking at that, you're looking at, are they being brave in the attempt? Are they actually trying to beat the player? Are they trying to unbalance the player? So, are they being brave? So, just trying it, because beating a player is not an easy thing to get kids to do. It's not something that, depending on the age group, sometimes it's easier with the boys, frankly, because just the competitive nature of it.
They think this is going to come off. I'm going to look like Ronaldo, and it's like, you're ready to do it. Yeah. Even then, getting them to do it is be brave, try it out. And they're like, I'm just going to try to drip my hip and then go. And you're like, no, we just did scissors for half an hour. Come on.
Well, that's my U16 girls, to be honest. And if they ever listen to this, because I've had that happen to me before, my girls found the podcast and listened to what I talked about the team. But they hate 1v1s. They hate them. We'll do the moves and everything, and then we'll do 1v1s, and they just don't enjoy that environment. So for me, getting them to try it, getting them to then try the actual move against the defender, not like you said, Matt, just drop your shoulder and go the other way. For me is a big one. And are they getting success from that? So are they unbalancing the defender with the move so they create the space for the shot? So for me, that's showing me that they understood what it is we were trying to do, and then they can hopefully, with repetition, put that into the game.
Love it. And yeah, I just feel like that is something where I kind of found the technical aspect, working technical. I'm like, yo, these look great. They're just beating the hell out of these cones. There's no way this cone's going to be able to keep up with them. And then we go, all right, let's play 3v3. And it's like, no one's doing anything we just worked on. And I'm like, maybe this is this line drill where we're just dribbling out a cone, beating it. It's not working. I think there is a place for it to teach the move, just kind of
yes.
Hey, here we go. Do a couple reps. Now let's go play it. But I think that is really the struggle of getting the guys to be able to apply it. But I think like what you're saying and going back to the play practice play out is doing it against the cone is good for physical activity. Like now you know what it is, but you're not like no, this guy's trying to hurt me, or this guy's trying to take the ball from me, or he's right there and he's not just staying there. You're not getting that, and that's I think what coaches don't always realize. Like I think it's order, right? It's like it's safe, it's easy to say, okay, he ran to this cone, he did this, good, check, next guy up. It's hard to release that control of there's a million things going on right now. I'm overstimulated. I can't address everything, but they're all working. And it's hard to be like, this is good, even though I'm not making it good all the time. You're creating the environment rather than directing things.
Well, and definitely creating the environment is the most important thing I think a coach does, because creating the environment isn't just putting cones down. It's creating an environment where the kids come and feel like they can do anything they want in terms of soccer. They can be free from making mistakes. They're not getting punished. They're not getting yelled at. They're getting coached. They're getting nurtured. They're getting reinforcement, and they're getting help with what they want to get better at. And so that is part of creating the environment too. So for me, that's huge. You've got to be able to create that open, safe environment where the kids feel like they can do their best, screw up, and you'll still like them, and you'll still give them a high five, and you'll still coach them and teach them how to be better.
Right, like be
Now,
brave.
how do
And then
you?
you mess up, you idiot.
Yeah, exactly right. How many times do people? Yes, that's exactly it. Coach, you've taught me all these 1v1 moves. I get in the game, I do it, I lose the ball, and you yell at me. Well, wait a minute. Why am I going to ever try that again?
Yeah, like, probably I'm gonna drop my shoulder next time.
Yeah, I'm just going to pass it to Teddy next time. I'm not going to keep the ball. Yeah.
Now, how do you balance that freedom with, positional play, like where the kids should be on the field at different times? Like I think even last podcast, Matt and I were talking about just how you even look at like a Man City, everything's positional play. Like there's little to no freedom, yet they look at how good they are. So where is the balance that you find in between all that different stuff?
Be careful about looking at the professional game, because you've also got players of the highest technical level that can turn it on in a moment when they need to. So unbalancing a team with their structured possession and play is how they then create the magic moment for one player to do something ridiculous. Because
Pep also said don't play full-sided games in practice. I'm like, I think we're gonna keep doing it.
I think anybody that says don't ever do something is making a mistake. There's not a never or an always to me. It's just different situations for different things. But to answer your question, Fed, about the balance, it's something we talk about all the time. I talk to our ECNL coaches about it, and I'm coaching kindergarten through second grade. And even, I'm the director for the 8 through 12, so I deal with the 8 through 12 girls too. And it's like, how are we going to structure their learning environment so that they're ready to play at the ECNL level? And they're ready to play against Michigan Hawks and Eclipse that have horses and national team players at every position. And we go back and forth honestly about it, but it comes down to the technical development of the player and the competitive development of the player, the desire of a player to compete. Those two things are what's most prized by our ECNL coaches and what they want us to pound into our younger kids. And so I think that the balance changes depending on your age. I think at U8, it's me and the ball, me and the ball, me and the ball, me and the ball. U9, it's, hey, there's people on the field with you too, but a lot of me and the ball. U10, it starts to transition more into understanding of dynamics with teammates. 11s and 12s, now you're in 9v9, so it just naturally is more complex. So you're getting into more team stuff. But I still think it's huge that they continue to work on that individual technical stuff. Now, as you get to 11v11, the balance starts to, I wouldn't say shift, but level to where the technical development and the tactical understanding are on more equal par. Again, depending on your level. If you're talking about the ECNL coaches, they're training 4 days a week, and one of those days is a competition day where they're playing 1v1s and 2v2s. Another day is where they're doing technical work. Another day is they're playing 11v11 scrimmages on Wednesdays. So that's, they build all of those things in to that, but it morphs over time. So I think the question is complex because it depends on the age and stage of development.
I remember asking one of my kids at West Windsor South, He was playing for an E64 team, and I'm like, hey man, like, what are some things from your club that you'd maybe like to see? And he goes, well, our philosophy is run, kick, tackle. I'm like, yeah, but what, like crosses? He's like, we run faster than the other team, kick the ball better from the other team, tackle better than the other team. I'm like, okay,
Oh, that's what we should have been doing. Oh,
the whole
just
time.
be better than our team. We should have done that. What have we been doing?
I've actually
Just
talked to our ECNL coaches, and I won't name clubs, but there's clubs that's how they do it. They have great athletes. They are well organized. They understand the game. They can make tactical adjustments on the fly depending on what you're trying to do, and they go win. And you know what? I mean, if that's what you want to do, great. But if you want to develop players, you gotta be deeper than that.
and don't
You
have
gotta
any
have
lines.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of transitions into what we're talking about, moving away from like the player-centric part of it to more the coach's aspect and kind of, you on the sidelines and you as a learner, but you as a person, right? You've got this philosophy, but you've got constituents, right? Like you're a representative of the team and you're getting entrusted with, people's kids and people, as a parent, people kind of go nuts for their kids, right? And so,
Yeah.
you got the the U6, the U8, whatever, and you're saying dribble, 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 right? And then you look over across the sideline and it's pass it, Johnny, pass it. Why is he not passing it? Why don't we try passing it now? And you're like, stop. So I know you had an episode about it, and discussed, the parent meetings and stuff like that. And we were going to ask a little bit later, like, so you can start thinking about it. What is like your number one episode? But that one stuck out to me. So what would you tell, a younger coach? You've got a philosophy, you feel confident about it, but parents are like just, undoing everything you do. They're going home, they're getting in the car and like, why were you passing? Why were you dribbling the ball? Like, what are you telling that coach to tell those parents, and what does that conversation look like?
Engaging parents is a huge job for a coach. I mean, it's one of the most important roles you have is engaging the parents. And I think that word is important because they're not just checkbooks and drivers. They don't just pay the fees and get the kids to practice. They're spending way more time with these kids than you are. So you have to get them to, you have to sell. You have to sell what your philosophy is and why you're doing it. Now, the older you get and the more successful you get, then the easier that becomes. But for young coaches, you just have to say, this is what I believe, and this is how we're going to do it. And here is your role as the parent. Here's my role as the coach. I develop a philosophy. I develop a methodology that I'm going to use to get across this philosophy in practice. I work on different activities that are going to get across that philosophy to the kids that are going to transfer to the game. That's my job. The kids' job is to come out, do their best, and have fun. That's it. That's their job. Do their best, have fun. You as a parent, your job is to support your child by supporting me as their teacher. Because if we're at odds, you're going to win. I don't have a prayer. You're spending every day and every evening with them. I get them an hour twice a week, an hour and a half twice a week, and games on the weekend. So we've got to get on the same page. Understand that this is what I believe and why I believe it. If you're a coach with some background, then hopefully parents look at that and go, he knows more than I do, or she knows more than I do. And then they're willing to go along. And if nothing else, I say to parents, give me a chance. Give me a chance. Do it my way, and let's see how it works. Because every time you tell Johnny what to do, you steal his opportunity to learn what to do. And that's the biggest thing that I use with my parents in my program, even to this day, is don't steal their learning opportunity. Because every mistake they make, every situation they see is an opportunity to make a choice and do an action. I'm going to choose to pass it, or I'm going to choose to dribble it. And sometimes I'm going to be right, and sometimes I'm going to be wrong. And you as a parent can see the field and the complexity of the field so much easier. And you could tell them, dribble down the line. And they'll dribble down the line and have success, and they'll have no idea why. No idea. And if you just allow them to see it and do it, now they've done it and they understand, hey, I made that decision. I got that right. Or shoot, that didn't work. And I as a coach will say, hey, what could you do different next time? Or I as the coach, while they're doing the action, will say, eyes up. I'm not telling them what to do beyond look up. Look up and make a decision. And getting the parents to buy into that is not always easy, and not everybody does it. But I would say my best advice to young coaches is
You'd be very
be
surprised.
adamant and be consistent. Tell them before the season. Tell them what you're going to do during the games if they don't listen, which mine is parents, let them do it, or let them figure it out, or let them see it. I'll say something to the group. And then I'll tell them in the preseason meeting, if it continues, I'll say, Bob, let her figure it out, or whatever parent's name. And that's going to be super embarrassing for you and your daughter. And I'm not trying to do it for that reason, but I want her to develop and grow. And the best way for her to do that is for her to learn it on her own. You're not in school over her shoulder during math class telling her how to do it. It's the same thing. So
some though, if they could, they would try it.
You know what? And some do when they get home from school, don't they? But these lawnmower parents, that is an analogy that I've heard. You got the helicopter parent, right? That's over the top. Then you got the lawnmower parent that gets all the things out of the way of the kid, and they just got to let them learn. They learn best through trial and error and repetition.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I took away from that episode when I listened to it, so long ago now. But like, I kind of got into it. I'm like, hey, I'm the coach, and my coach is like my dad was a coach, so when my coaches said stuff, he didn't say anything, and I was like, that's just how it is. So I'm like, this is what we're gonna do. Everybody listen. And it was like, no. But then I thought about it. I'm like, well, I'm asking these players to trust me,
Yep.
and I'm explaining to them, and the parents have no idea. And like an example this season, like we had planned for a team specifically that had a player that was, I think we were pretty locked up. I think we had advantage at every other position, but they had one player that was just unreal. I mean, this is how we're going to lose this game. And we always talk about, we're on a corner kick, we want to be numbers up. So if they leave one forward, we leave two guys back. If they leave two, we leave three. This time I'm like, we're leaving three guys back against one, because I'm like, I'm not letting this guy beat us. And I have someone screaming across, like, you don't need to be there. I'm like, yes, you do. Like, you need to stay there. And he almost countered us. Like, he went up, and thank God he didn't stay there. But I'm like, but you have to kind of recognize, and take a step back. And again, a lot of it, I feel, of coaching is humility. And be like, hey, I didn't really express that. I have to tell the coach or the parent every single thing I'm doing. But I said, hey, I'm coaching, blah, blah, but I didn't express so much like what we're actually doing. They get home and they're like, what'd you go practice today? Like, oh, we did some drills. Like, all right, like, whatever. I could have done a little bit more there with explaining, hey, understand when we do this, we watch film, we have scouting reports, we're doing these things, so it might not make sense to you, and you assume that they should just know that, but not always true. And I feel like that was a moment where I had to take a step back and think about that episode way back when I was, explaining things to parents, explaining what's going on. And again, you don't have to your every single move, but recognize like they're there, they're investing a lot of time, they're investing a lot of money in a lot of cases. They want to see success. They're living and dying. This is their child, and you kind of have to. I think a lot of times we take that stance of like parents. That's a problem. It's like, but they can be a problem, but they can also be a solution. They can be on board.
Oh, you have to have, if you have the parents behind you and they're
There's
cheering for their
I'm going to
kids
be a balloon
and
there,
they're
so I'm just
cheering
going to
for
fly to the
other
corner
people's
flag and keep
kids,
my comments
then
there.
that's the best.
Like
and that's where you've got a supportive environment where they're there.
My wife and I already have a deal at home.
And you,
we're like, once he gets
by
into
staying out of your
sports,
way,
I'm
but by
standing
staying out of
against
your way, they're
myself.
supporting their kids.
I will talk.
It's an education process.
I'm like, I'm not going to be that parent that is all up in his business or the coach.
You
so
hugely, not just as the
parents
checkbook and the
can
driver.
bring burnout.
And I'm more than willing
Tom,
to
you were
have conversations
coaching.
with you.
You obviously you've got all these different levels, all different academies, and you really podcast. With Matt and I just get into it now. It's a grind.
Because of that conversation.
How did you manage that mental load so that way you didn't feel the mid-season
burnout? After having talked to a parent, I've changed things after talking to coaches about what I was doing and maybe different ways to do it. But if you get parents that buy into it, and you just have to keep hammering it, and maybe you have to do different things with different parent groups. With my program now, I send weekly emails. Here's what we're working on. Here's what we're seeing in the games. Here's how we're going to continue to work on this. So that goes out every week. Sometimes with a parent group, if I want them to hear what I'm telling the kids, I'll do my halftime talk or post-game talk in front of the parents. And I'll put the kids in front of the parents, and I'll say, I'm not going to talk to you guys. I'm going to talk to them. But I'm doing this because when you get in the car, you're going to ask them what I said, and they're going to say nothing.
That gave me so much anxiety thinking about giving my halftime speech against RV in front of a parent. Yeah? we let it go at the last second.
Yeah, you got to be a little vulnerable then and, say, hey, this is what I saw and, what we're going to do to correct it. And I think parents respect that if you do it. But it is challenging, especially the younger the coaches are. And as a young coach, I never did that. I wish I would have. But once I had kids of my own and I had done it for a while, I felt more comfortable. But I think those are tools that you can use to engage the parents in the process without making them assistant coaches. Because that's the other thing. They'll say things that you said at the totally inappropriate time. It's not. They shouldn't have said anything at all. And so, yeah.
Get to the kill zone. We're on defense. We're on defense. Don't get to the kill zone.
Yes, exactly. There you go. Those you can identify those parents, the smart parents, the ones that are sitting near the corner flag.
Mm.
Yeah. 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 Not sure that I did, because I stopped it after 6 years. Um, I think you just compartmentalize things and you just I used it as a cathartic experience doing the podcast to talk about what it is that we were doing in trainings and things like that. But, that was, going from work during the day to coaching in the evening to doing the podcast. I was telling Matt every Thursday night. I'm getting PTSD now, just going through doing the podcast and putting it out so that it was there on Friday morning for people to listen to. But I mean, I miss it in some ways, but I think it's a work-life balance thing that you have to do, even if you're not doing a podcast. You got to compartmentalize these things so that your work is your work, and your kids are your kids, and then your coaching is separate from that. And trying to balance those things, not easy. And I don't. You'd have to get my kids on the podcast to ask them how well I did at those things. But
That's so funny you say that. We got mics we're going to the convention this weekend, so we got mics to interview people. My kids were playing with them, and my daughter's like, "Why don't you interview me?" I'm like, "All right, so hey, Daddy's been coaching for your entire life. Like, what do you think?" And she's like, "It's difficult." I'm like, "Oh, all right." And she started going into some of the details, and like
yeah,
it made me more cognizant of like she's like, "It's fun when we go to it, when you make us a part of it. When like we would go to practice. I know like when we go to practice, I don't know. You obviously don't have Wawa. We go to Wawa or I don't know. You
yeah,
guys
yeah,
go
yeah, yeah.
7-Eleven. So we
Quick
got
trip.
Wawa.
Yeah,
What do you got?
quick trip.
Oh, okay, quick trip. So we got Wawa. So we go. I'm like, we're gonna get Sizzlies. We're gonna get a chocolate milk, and I call the managers actually, and like I pay them money or I bring them like extra gear, and they sit and like play with them, and it's like a huge event for them. And they're like, I think they started associating with me going to practice, like, oh, those are Daddy's boys. Like, oh, can we go hang out with the boys and the girls and stuff like that. And that's been for me now with I got a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and it's like that balance is so difficult. And I want to give so much to my team, but I want to give so much to my kids. And we talked to a couple weeks ago with Josh Mell, and he's like that was kind of it for me. Like I was losing out on so much time with them. Um, and so kind of what was your experience with that? Like how much were you dealing with? You have kids, you have these teams, you have these commitments, and how well did you do with that balance? What would you look back and change kind of in that regard?
Yeah, it's so hard because I've got my youngest now just turned 24 yesterday. My oldest is just about to turn
Sad
29 here
McDonald's.
pretty quick. And I coached her from 4 to 19. So I coached her all
I
the
would
way through.
literally and
So
Matt, hi, can I get a
that relationship
hi?
was easy
Can I get
because we were always
a
going to
large
practice
number
and
two?
things like
Like,
that.
and I'm like, okay, and
But
that's how I know
then
they had the
you
game
have to
went. Yeah,
make
new.
like
Like I think he
specific
would time
time
in. I
for
think
other
I did it
things that
like
you
once
do
to
with
him.
the
Hey,
other
I went to
kids.
Taco Bell. I was like,
Now
yeah,
my
can I get like a
middle
quesarito?
daughter, she didn't enjoy soccer. Big
It's
dancer.
so
So
hard.
our time was spent
It's so
cutting
hard
her
coming
music
home, and I
for
think now
dance,
realize
or me going
coming
to her
home and having a
performances,
1.5 year old charging at you, going,
we got
"Daddy, Daddy," and
into
just being like,
as
my
she got
14 year
older, we
old's
got into
just
different common
my
interests.
14-year-old.
With my son, we got into
Okay,
playing
Daddy,
par
how?
three golf. We'd go out and play par three golf together because he wasn't into soccer, but he's a great bass player and in a band and all that. And so we'd go and play golf together. So you find the different things that the different kids enjoy and do your best to balance those out. and spending time with the whole family and your wife and trying to balance those is never easy for anybody, but I don't think that's unique to our career. I think everybody struggles with those things. I think sometimes we look at what we do
That was a
as
great
a
talk that we
recreational
had with
activity.
Josh
So
about
it's
that whole
like
thing,
maybe we feel a little bit
about
worse
how it
about,
was winning,
I'm coaching
short
other
conference
people's
title,
kids instead of
sectional
spending time
title,
with my own.
and
And
it just
there's
became
definitely
such
a
a
part of
hey,
that.
winning. It's like, okay,
But
we
me
got to
doing that
keep
also gave
doing
my
it.
kids a lot of opportunities. I put 3 kids through college that I wouldn't have been able to do without coaching. So there's a balance to everything. And like I said, you'd probably have to ask them how well I did that, and they're all highly productive, smarter kids than me. So I guess we did okay there. But I know every coach goes through it, but every parent goes through it, no matter what they're in, what line of work they're in.
I know. If I feel like the biggest thing for me is like, I like, people are like, oh, or we wanted to start doing stuff with FIFA and, doing Twitch and stuff like that and kind of branching out. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't played FIFA in like, I don't know, I don't remember how long because like it's almost like you find this thing where you're like, I'm enjoying myself, I'm having a great time, but I'm not with my family, and you're with them and you're like, oh, I wish I had some more free time to kind of do my own thing, and then you're doing your own thing and you're like, I wish I was with my family, and you're constantly kind of pulled in these two different directions. So you're like, I said this before to my wife, and I was like, when I was really struggling with that balance, I'm like, you're getting the worst version of me. Like I'm giving the best version of me to my students in class or my players, and then I'm getting home and I'm like, we lost a match, and like everyone knows, like the family's quiet, like dinner's quieter, like no one talked to daddy. I'm like, I like kind of call myself, I'm like, yo, you're getting like the worst version of Matt, and that was kind of the line in the sand for me. I'm like, like these kids are gonna remember and associate you coaching with you being like blowing a 3-1 lead. Like that's how they're going to see you, and then they're going to see
Right.
coaching. And that was a big struggle for me. And I think I've done a little better job with it from talking with her in the podcast. But that's one of the ideas we actually had with Josh was like the next session we're going to have is we're going to bring all of our wives in. They're going to talk crap about us and tell us how
The
obsessed we
wives
are.
take over the podcast. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was my favorite episode I did out of all the episodes was the one I interviewed my daughter. I had Alex on the podcast, and we had listeners send in questions. So they sent in a huge list of questions that we went through. But that was huge. We had also had conversations all along the way. Every year we had a talk at the end of the year. Do you want to keep playing soccer? Yes, she would say. Do you want me to keep coaching you? Yes, she would
Like
say.
and subscribe. Like
Then
and
we get on the
subscribe.
podcast and we talk about that. And she goes, yeah, but toward the end, I was kind of wanted somebody else to maybe coach me, but my friends really liked you as the coach, and so I didn't want to disappoint them. But so having that conversation was, awesome for me, so that we could, talk about all the good times we had. But like I was talking about compartmentalizing things, like we had a rule with me as her coach, we would never talk about soccer once we got in the car. We were dad and daughter. There was a line. And I did the same thing when I came home. I really wouldn't talk much about, games and training sessions and things like that, occasionally with my wife, but I try really hard to just drop it at the door. Now, there were times I had to go walk around a little bit before I came through the door. And there were times my daughter and I sat outside the car and talked for quite a long time about the game that she just played. But we never, I just tried really hard not to cross that line. And
Yeah.
if you do that, then hopefully you create a separation.
Fed knows about the sad meals. I've since stopped because I think I was gonna have a heart attack. But there's a point where like I can't go home. I'm just gonna go get McDonald's. Like you're a bad person. You deserve a bad meal. I would get McDonald's when we lose, and I'm like, oh, so it didn't go well. Just like eating my feelings. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I'm like
big
I need
deal.
to do something so when I get home.
That's funny.
He's like, who's Palmyra? I don't care about Palmyra.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
I'll tell you what, but you also get more perspective the longer you go, because the wins and the losses really started to balance out as I went on. I had a team that did very well, and went to President's Cup Nationals and won President's Cup Nationals. And I'm driving back home, thinking I'm all that in a bag of chips. And I got parents texting me about why their daughter didn't make, the first 11 from the tournament. And I'm like, oh, this is it. Okay. Now I understand. Winning, losing, they're both the same. Doesn't matter. You just go on to the next thing, and regardless. So that was a hard lesson.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah. We got to keep winning. Like this is good. We can't not win now. Yeah, and you're like chasing that high, and it's like, but I always say like we're going out here and we're in a paid position, and this is like my money that I make that puts food on the table for my family, and
Yeah.
that job relies on 14-year-olds listening to me, like them doing what I want them to do. And you're like, I'm putting my job in the hands of like kids that are like, yeah, I didn't bring my penny to practice today, and you're like, my job's in line with you. Like, oh no. But you brought it up about your daughter's episode, so we'll tack that on as number one. So, but if anyone could listen back to the show after they listen to all our podcast, our version of the podcast, like, subscribe, then like and subscribe again. If anyone could go back and listen to your version of the podcast, what's an episode you'd say was like kind of really stood out to you as like your favorite? I think this, if you're a coach, go listen to this one. This was really special and impactful. If you could pick one, other than the one
Yeah,
obviously with your daughter, like you talked about.
that's so hard just because there's so many good ones, and I should have thought about that in advance, to be honest with you. But I really enjoyed so many of the conversations with other coaches. So the first ones I would go to are the interviews. You don't need to sit and listen to me talk about things. The
That's not
coaches
true. You're being modest. They're good, but
the coaches that I was able to talk to, Bob Warming, Yael Averbush with the whole Techni app, the thing that she's built with that is incredible, and her background as a player, and
go Gotham.
those were great episodes. So I mean, really, the interviews that I got to talk to other coaches of other clubs about what they do and why they do it and how they do it. To me, those were always the most fun for me to do. I mean, the episode where I talk about a training session is fine, and hopefully people got value from that. But for me, talking to other coaches was the best.
Yeah, it's. I was explaining this to like a friend who was like, doesn't coach, and he played football in high school, and new coaches, but on the other end it's different. And I think there's like the book's called like Coaching Atop a Volcano, and it talks about like how like lonely the job is. Like you're surrounded by people all the time, and you have other people, but like as a head coach, and especially as a youth coach without assistants, you're kind of like you're out there, and it's your ideas, and it's your you're out there, and you're making the calls, and you're putting the players in, and you have so much riding on you, and it can be kind of like you get so much in your own head. So to be able to do that, like we're doing right now, and discuss those things, and some of it is, oh, okay, I'm not as crazy as I thought. Other people think the same way, but it's also a lot of like, okay, that's not how I perceived it, and getting that idea, like that's really, opening your mind to, because you can get into. I know there's times where I'm like, we're gonna do this. I'm like, I can't even think of another thing to do. Like I'm like so focused on like what we're doing. Like we're gonna do this drill, and I'm like, I've run out of ideas, and I know a million drills, but I can't get out of my own head. And that cathartic, like you said, experience of talking to other guys is like so important. I think sometimes we lose that, and we were like just kind of get in our own lane, and we stay there. And I always really enjoyed those, and just hearing you kind of bounce ideas off and flip back and forth, and have those conversations. So again, listen to all our episodes, and then you can go back and listen to all the Coaching Soccer Weeklies, and if you got the time, guys. So, but
There's a lot of podcasts.
yeah, like and subscribe, unlike and subscribe, and then resubscribe again. Yeah. So yeah, we've had. I feel like we could go on for another couple hours here, and we have more time because we got the time zones wrong. So we're in different parts of the country. But one thing we've been really pushing. I love all the conversation we had, and we can get into the nitty gritty and philosophy and stuff like that. But I think one thing we really wanted to do is something coaches can sit here and be like, all right, this is all great. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to develop over time, but I got a session in an hour, and I need something. So we try to end each session with something tangible we can walk away with. So, and like we said, you got your Rolodex of drills. What's one drill that you like feel confident coaching within it, but like you feel that you can go and be like, I can make this an attacking drill. I can make this defending drill. This can be a shooting drill. This can be a possession drill. Like it's just a Swiss Army knife drill that you've got in your toolkit.
The one that is one that I'll go back to if somebody says, here, come and run a session with my team. So one of the games I would play, because it's so scalable, is we called it American Gladiators. If you're an 80s child, you know what that's about. But it's basically two teams in two separate grids side by side. The grid can vary depending on the number of kids and the age of the kids. And then what you're doing is you're starting by having one person from each team be the it player that's going to go to the other grid and try to kick everybody out. So when your ball gets kicked out, you're out of the game. And so now it becomes protect the ball, find open space. So all of those key, skills that a player has to have to possess the ball until they can connect the ball with somebody else. So we started out with that, play several rounds of that, teaching, shielding, teaching. If you're facing a player, can you do like nose to nose 1v1 moves? If you're back to pressure, what's the move you're going to do? If you're side by side, shoulder to shoulder, what's the move you're going to do? So there's a ton that you can teach over time with that activity. But then the way I then progress that is to say, right, now your ball gets kicked out, your ball's out of the game, but you stay in the game. So now when a ball gets knocked out and somebody's under pressure, then how can you help them? So you can get open. And now it turns into a possession game, a team possession game. It's still a possession game. So we go from individual possession to now it's 5 soccer balls and one person helping. Well, somebody else loses their ball. And now we're down to only 4 soccer balls and 2 people helping. And eventually it turns into a rondo. So eventually you're playing a keep away game. And how long can you play that? And how successfully can the kids, play that? And then you teach, spreading out, using space, moving to get open. You teach all the things that you would do in a rondo, but it's a competitive environment where now you've got kids from the other team trying to kick you out. It's not just if you lose the ball, you go in the middle. So there's just a little bit more skin in the game. Whichever team keeps a ball in the longest wins each round, whether you're playing individual or you're playing it as a team. So for me, that's a revisit game. And you can play that with any level. I've played that with kindergartners. I've played that with high school kids. And obviously you're going to coach different things to different levels. Your expectations are going to be different depending on the level that you're coaching at. But for me, that's just a go-to activity that I'll do. And that's one that I know is in the podcast from before. I know it's on the World Class Coaching website, on the YouTube channel. That's one that I think is valuable because it's so scalable. I've done that with 4 grids because I was running a session with 20 kids. And if you're running a session with 20, 25 kids, that's a great activity to do because now you can have, these 2 grids play this time and then those 2 grids play against each other the next time. It keeps everybody active. You can coach, so many topics within that environment. Now, it's not a direction to it, so it's not, a big play, practice, play. There's no shooting. But if you're working on possession, that's a great technical activity to work on possession.
It feels like one of those drills where it's like they're having a blast and they don't realize that they're learning. It's like,
Yes.
oh crap, I got a lot out of that. I can actually explain what I was doing there. But like in the game, there's like, this is just so much fun.
But then you go to
that's
the
awesome.
game at the end and you can start talking about all the things you worked on from that. So it's transformed.
Yeah, like the snapshots, like we said,
Yes,
you're like
the snapshots,
drawing
like
in
you
those
said.
snapshots.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, yeah, I love that one. So what we've been doing is we've been following up with these and putting them into videos and drills and stuff like that. So we'll follow up. So if you are like me, like you need to see it, we'll have that written up for everybody so you can check that out. So
Great.
can you just say it? It'll be in the show notes. Can you say that for me?
Oh, it'll be in the show notes.
Oh, there you go. Oh, great. So I can't tell you, Tom,
In
how
the show notes,
great it's been. It's been great hanging out with you. This is one of those like meet your hero moments. I'm glad you're not a jerk, because I've built you up in my head like this. So when I asked you, I was kind of like, I'm gonna give it a shot. Like, I wonder what he's doing. Haven't talked in a while. And it's been awesome. You haven't missed a beat. It's been absolutely fantastic. Again, for me, I'm like telling my wife, I'm like, this podcast I used to listen to, he's gonna be on. I'm really excited. Gotta be prepared. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You were listening to podcasts. I wasn't listening to them as well. So, but dude, it's been so great connecting with you and hearing some of your thoughts and ideas, about coaching and from the technical, tactical perspective, but also you as a parent and stuff like that. I think a lot of people will connect with that. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
No, I appreciate you guys keeping it going because one of the things when I stopped doing it, I was afraid that that vehicle was gonna just not be out there for young coaches and new coaches and coaches that want more information. So I appreciate you guys picking it up and keeping it going. So I'll do whatever I can to help that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll post some stuff in there about so you can access some of the old episodes. The website should be updated soon, so we'll get some new updates and have connections to that. Everything's still on Spotify and anywhere where you get your podcast. So check that out for sure. So one more time, thank you again so much for coming on, Tom, and have a good night,
Thanks.
everybody.
Appreciate it.